Hello, my name's Ron Waller and I'm the president of the Swarms Model Aero Club based in Bunbury in the southwest region of Western Australia. The club's been established in this area for over 35 years. We're fortunate enough to have a member, Rob Woodhead, in the club who has a passion for building large model aircraft. Rob's been in the club for 14 years and in that period of time he's actually built 5 large models. Today we're going to spend a little bit of time with Rob to find out just what motivates him to spend many hours of his life in the isolation of a shed producing these incredible models. The problem with the challenges that he's associated with building these models, and also what motivates him enough to want to go back and build another model. So we'll go through the 5 models with Rob in a general discussion. Okay, Woody, welcome along, mate. You've had a check at history in RC modelling, and I'd like to sit with you this morning and just have a very candid discussion about your achievements. At what age did you find that you had an interest in model aeroplanes?
As a teenager, I had a bit of a look at control on it, but mainly in my mid-20s, I suppose.
So it was about the mid-20s you actually got involved in the sport?
I did. I worked up in Headland where there were no clubs, so I just started building them and crashing them.
I like the emphasis being on the crashing. I believe that you had a break in the sport due to work commitments, family and travel. How long was that period?
20 years.
So you were out of the sport for 20 years?
20 years.
And you joined Swarms in 2004. Is that when you got back into the sport?
Well, that's when I came down from Headland, and that's where I learned how to fly. So I was with Cams it was, till I gave it up in 1982, I think it was. Yeah.
Has radio control modelling always been a key focus in your life, or was there some other interest, excluding women?
Yeah. No, not too many there. I did actually do motorbike scrambling, they call it motocross these days, when I was a teenager. But getting married and having kids pretty soon after, that had to go by the board, so I was always a bit interested in it, but that was by the board. The other thing is, when I gave up the sport, the aircraft, I always found I always wanted to do something. I couldn't just sort of sit around watching TV. I always wanted to do something. I took up sailing, and that for 20 years I always had a boat. Started off with a catamaran and then had a 20-foot trailer sailor, and ended up with a 34-foot S&S Sparkman 34, which you could actually sail around the world, which place I had done.
But none of those got off the ground?
No.
Okay, so we'll focus on the planes.
And the only thing too is, if you had trouble with them, you didn't come home.
All right.
If you have trouble with the model, you just take it home in a bag, don't you?
So when you started in the hobby, you wouldn't have the options we've got now with ARFs, ARCs, all that sort of thing. So you had a passion for scratch building back then?
Well, but you had to. Well, you got a small kit, but you had to start from stage 1, you know.
Did you ever get into detail of scale modelling?
Not really. Standoff scale I went for. Back then they had scale, and that had to show every rivet, and that was, you had to be a maniac to do that, I reckon. But then they brought out standoff scale, which was looking 10 feet away, so if it looked something like it. So I did get a little bit into standoff scale. I just mention one thing. When I was with Cams, I built this twin engine Catalina, the small one. I actually built one down there too, with 2 25s in it. And I was just proud of that. And I went to this competition, the only twin engine in the competition, I got bloody 4th. So after that, I did no more competition. They don't give you any credit for the work you've done on it, just how it looks, you know.
Can you recall the first model you ever built?
Yeah, it was a hustler.
As we do.
Yeah.
So,
and can I just say another thing on that? There's a bloke in Perth, in a Perth model shop. He's revitalised the Aeroflight brand, and they're all building hustles again. And everybody's going crazy over them. They brought the old mates back, you know.
So how many models have you built since you became involved in building models?
Oh, mate, I lost count.
You build them, you crash them.
Yeah.
Have you ever flown models in competition?
Yes, I did a bit of pylon racing back when I was with camp. Yeah.
Right. Any success?
I got fourth in the West Australian Championships, right? And every 2 years they have a Trans-Tasman Championships, and they start off obviously with the winners, but not everyone can go. So they go to second, third, probably in Sydney, and they got to me, and I was eligible. And I thought, here we go. So I did. I went over to New Zealand in '82, the Trans-Tasman team, which was pylon racing and aerobatics.
When did you develop the passion for building large models? And I've got a bit of an idea about that. I'm not sure about prior, but you joined the club in 2004. I joined the club in 2005.
Yeah.
And my first involvement with you was sitting at this table one morning,
Yeah.
and you were telling me that I'm going to build a big model with 8 motors.
Yeah.
I went back over the pitch and I said to the guys over there, is that bloke over there okay? I think he's been in the sun too long. He's going to build a big model with 8 motors.
Yeah.
But as you progressed through that, you then brought out the plans and showed me, so I knew you were serious.
Yeah.
So was that the first time you actually decided you wanted to build a big model?
Yeah, I think it was. We went down to a lake down near Mount Barker. There was about 4 of us, and they were seaplanes, and obviously the Spruce Goose was a seaplane. And I started talking about it, and they said, "Oh, you couldn't do it. You couldn't have 8 trolleys. You couldn't do it." As soon as someone says to me, "You couldn't," there's a red flag. So that's when I sort of started about it. And the big, they are impressive, but also the big, they fly much better, as you know, Ron. As you know, if you get a 60 trainer compared to a 40, it's just that much smoother, isn't it?
Yeah, I was privileged to fly the B-29.
Yeah.
I have to agree with you. It was a pleasure
Smooth,
to fly.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So since you commenced these large projects, you've completed 5.
Yeah.
And each one of those, we're going to go through in a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
So the Spruce Goose was first,
Yeah.
the Catalina was second,
Yeah.
the B-29 was third,
Yeah.
the Southern Cross was fourth,
Yeah.
and currently working on the B-36, which is getting very close to
Yeah.
having a test flight.
Yeah.
So we're going to look at each one of those in a little more detail,
Yeah.
so as that it gives people an idea just what went into the construction of these things.
Yeah.
So the Spruce Goose, was that scratch built or
Yes,
jet built?
yes.
It was scratch built.
Scratch built, yeah.
For people that don't know what scratch building is, that you have to mark out and cut out every little
Yeah.
piece of the components,
Yeah.
then glue them all together. What was the wingspan on the Spruce Goose?
12'6". I'm going the Yankee model because that's how they do 12'6".
What was the flying weight of the model?
22 kgs.
Powered by?
8 OSLA 46 nitro motor.
The build time. The hours that you spent in the shed
Yeah.
constructing that.
Probably 2 years. And if you go 40 hours a week, that's 2,000 hours. And I wouldn't have got anything like 40 a week. I probably got 20 a week, I suppose. So.
What were the main challenges that you faced building that?
The amount of work, actually. What I decided, and this was the old days I'd done a bit of building like this, was foam wings covered with balsa and a fiberglass body if it's a seaplane, because you can't put balsa in water, you know, that's just my opinion. So the foam wings I got cut by Scotty with his machine, most of it. Some of the larger bits I had to cut myself. But then the body, I made a plug up, just like they do for a boat or whatever, and use that as a die for the body. So that was very involved and very time consuming, making making a fiberglass body. If you know about fiberglass, you make up a plug, then you make a mould, and then you make the final thing off it.
Fiberglass.
The wings weren't too bad. No, they weren't too bad.
Now, the thing with the Spruce Goose,
Mm.
when you spoke to me about it originally, you explained it was Howard Hughes's original plane,
Yeah.
which never ever flew.
No, it did fly
It
like.
flew
Yeah.
about 50
Yeah,
metres off
yeah.
the ground for about 100 metres, and that was the end of the story.
That's right, yeah.
There was one guy in in Canada, I think, who
Yeah.
decided he would build a model.
Yeah.
progressing through the build, it turned out that he had a major heart attack and died.
That's right, yeah.
So as a result of that, the club that he was in banded together and completed the actual build, but it never flew.
Yeah.
It's now in a Canadian museum.
Mm.
You had a bit of an experience with the Spruce Goose.
Yeah.
That bloke unfortunately passed away.
Yeah.
And you almost passed away whilst
Yeah.
working on the Spruce Goose.
Yeah.
You had a heart attack on the side of the road.
Yeah.
For 7 days you were in no man's land.
Yeah.
And you're back with us today.
Yeah.
We're privileged to have that occur. But there just seemed to be a stigma with the
Yeah,
Spruce Goose that
I
it was
suppose.
never ever deemed to fly, but you proved them wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've actually flown it and it's been flown very, very effectively.
It's flown much further than the original, actually.
It certainly
Yeah,
has. I'll never forget the day that it was actually test flown here when Rowdy Matthews was your
Yeah,
test
yeah.
pilot. And he did a second flight
Mm.
and came north-south on this runway. He did a
A knife
he
edge.
did a knife edge, and we were standing out there, and I said, "Woody, look at this." You turned around and said, "Oh no, I can't watch it." But it was so impressive going down there with the 8 engines humming along.
Yeah.
He was
yeah.
doing a knife edge down.
But if he touched that wing on the ground, it'd been a cartwheel
Well,
of bits.
Yeah, that's right.
You would have got a
So,
nothing bigger than a matchbox.
so the Spruce Goose was
Yeah.
a real challenge for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It has been test flown, and
Yeah.
you overrode all the odds of it
Yeah.
actually flying, because every Spruce Goose prior to that had never flown.
Yeah, I think some electric ones did or something like that.
But that's not
Yeah,
a
yeah,
plane.
yeah. Okay, I just know another thing. Someone put it on YouTube, and altogether it's had about 120,000 hits. That's the
Spruce Goose?
Yeah,
Yep.
Spruce Goose, yeah, yeah.
That's good.
One off the water and one off the land. Yeah,
The other thing with the Spruce Goose is it was designed to fly on water.
yeah. Yeah, that's-
So you had to set up an undercarriage so you could do all the fine
Yeah.
tuning and testing on
yeah,
the ground.
Yeah, yeah.
Was there any major challenge associated with that?
Not really. I just did the simplest I could. Just made up some brackets that went around the fuse. You put a couple of bolts in it and an axle right through the whole lot. Just a 1/4 inch piano. And it was yeah, it worked all right. But it never came off. It stayed there. Never came off. Yeah.
So having completely built, tested and proved that it worked on the
Yeah,
ground,
yeah.
the next thing was to try it in the water.
Yeah, yeah,
And I never forget the first time that lifted off the water,
yeah,
it was a little bit sluggish to get going,
yeah, yeah.
but as soon as it broke the water and all that water dripped
Yeah,
underneath
yeah,
it,
yeah.
oh, what a sight.
Was yeah.
Yeah, so it proved that it was a
Yeah.
very successful
Actually,
model.
on my first computer, when you switch on the phone, that was a Spruce Goose. Just lifting off.
Yeah, very good.
Every time I turned on, oh, you little beauty.
Okay, so having been very successful with that, at what stage you then just made the decision to build a Catalina?
I'd always loved the Catalina, you know. But to me, it was that ugly, it was beautiful. Do you understand what I mean? And I suppose model-wise, the motors are closer together, you got a better chance with an engine out. And I had built 60-powered ones before when I with Cam.
So what was the wingspan on that?
That was about 13 foot.
13 foot?
Yeah.
What was the flying weight of the model?
That was 33 kg. She was a big
33
one.
kg, they are getting up a bit.
That's the first monster giant model to be certified in WA.
Right.
The first one.
Powered by?
230cc DLE two-stroke.
Petrol
yeah,
engine.
right.
Build time on that?
Oh, gee, 2 years at least, 2 years. Because that had a very complicated retracting undercarriage, which I got my mate. Between us, we worked something out. It also had retracting wingtips, the floats, just the real one had them. Used to go up. But it sounds easy enough, just put a cylinder up there, but we found that we had to do all sorts of things to get the leverage, you know what I mean? So stuff like that took a long time, yeah.
So we've only covered 2 planes,
Yeah.
and straight away we've identified 4 years of your life's been spent in a shed.
Yeah, yeah,
And we've got a long way to go.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So what were the main problems with the build? Any major problems?
Well, with the cat.
Hmm.
No, yeah, the undercarriage, that was the big part. And we got it going, but I don't think we ever, I think on the day something bent or something. We never pulled them up, but because they come up into the body, real good stuff.
Did that ever fly on water?
No.
Yeah, I've seen it fly
Yeah,
here.
no.
It looked very impressive when it
No,
was
never
in the
did
air.
fly on the water.
Hmm.
No.
That's what Catalinas are for.
Yeah, I know, yeah, yeah.
All right, the next one, the B29.
Yeah,
The big decision to
yeah,
take the next step into something a bit bigger.
yeah.
So, and it had a bit of a checkered life too, didn't it?
Yeah,
We'll go through
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
So what was the wingspan on the B29?
that's about 13 foot, yeah.
What was the flying weight of the model?
24 kg, just under the 25.
Powered by?
420cc DLE petrols.
And we'll talk about the original build time.
Mm-hmm. 18 months.
18 months for the original. Main challenges with the build?
But had an air undercarriage. Not too many challenges, but a hell of a lot of work. A hell of a lot. You got 4 engines for a start, you know. I'll just say with the Spruce Goose, once I made up a little fiberglass nacelle. It just had a bit of pipe, so that just a straight bit of pipe, and then I made up a hinge mount and a screw in there with a motor. Once I made up 8, I just made 8 of them, and they just drilled a hole and virtually glued them in and lined them all up. Easy. Bloody not so the B29.
Bit more of a challenge.
It's got bloody dihedral, so you had to twist them this way. You know, a lot of trouble. I did have a bit of a kit to work with though, you understand. It helped quite a bit.
Yeah, so
Just,
that was test flown here. Flew very, very well.
yeah, yeah.
Coming down with the 4 motors humming away was
Yeah,
really
yeah,
impressive.
yeah.
However, it had a bit of a problem on the second flight.
Yeah.
What went through your mind when the 2-port motor stopped and that dipped into the ground over there and pieces went everywhere?
Ray Anderson was right alongside me and he said, I heard him say, shut the motors and glided in. I think Steve, being a perfectionist, thought, I'll handle this, you know. So he brought it around and all of a sudden he decided to drop the wing. And so I think what went through my mind was shit, you know. I mean, son Jim was with me, helped get all the bits and we're driving home. And you want to know, I thought, I was sort of a bit numb, you know.
And what were your thoughts on the way home? Was there ever, during that period of time, a thing that went through your mind that this was very impressive, I'll rebuild it at that stage?
That was all at the back of my mind, yeah.